here in northern New Jersey. It's been the winter that seemingly just won't end, but now that it is the end of April, we've finally gotten some decent, consistent temperatures. So things are really starting to look up and open up at the homestead here. In this episode, I'm going to take you on a tour of the homestead because there's been a lot of changes over the past month or so. As you might recall from a prior video, I've installed the permaculture food forest floor. We have about 30 yards of wood chips laid down, and yet we're not quite done putting them all down. We still have a small amount to go, and they'll actually fit in here because I still have to come in all along here. I finally fixed that fence, so I've got to put in wood chips all along the fence line there, and then I'll be able to fill in some low spots out there. But before we get to that, I'll just give a quick vegetable garden update. Here we had pepper plants planted, and like I said, because this has been the winter that just wouldn't quit, we have no pepper plants anymore because we got hit with some late frosts and it just killed them off. The brassicas that I've planted are starting to come up now. We've got cabbage along this side and broccoli along here, and back there we've got two beefsteak tomato plants. I don't need a whole lot of tomatoes, but I wanted a few. And then in this bed here, I've got Walla Walla onions planted all, and I nearly killed them because when I ordered the sets, I waited well over a week before putting them in the ground, and I was doubtful whether they were going to take, but now they seem to be doing quite well, and they're starting to grow on their own, so hopefully we'll get some good onions this year. And then down here, we've got just a bunch of Brussels sprouts that we've planted. And I've never had luck with Brussels sprouts before, so I'm hoping this year will be better. And as you notice in the bed here, I still have if you notice in the bed here, they're still covered in mulch. And it's something new I'm trying this year. Where I planted, I just pulled back the mulch a little bit, put the seedling in, and then left it. I'm hoping that'll do weed suppression and continue. These are all leaves that were here from the fall that I put down, so I'm hoping that they'll just continue to break down and add to the soil. I'm going to end up going to the nursery though and picking up a bunch of pepper plants. We use a lot of peppers in our cooking, and I'll be planting some in the bed. It's a limited variety of what we're growing here in vegetables, but it's all things that we use and eat. And I've put in all the wood chips all in here as well. Makes for a nice cushiony walk. Now, these are actually 2x10 boards that make up these beds, so you can see it's a good 6 inches or so of wood chips that are in here as well. It's terrific for weed suppression, except for that one bunch of grass right back there. I'll have to pull that out by hand, but because it's right up against some chicken wire on the fencing, it makes it difficult to actually get it out. And my containers, the raspberries have started to sprout, and it doesn't look like as many of the plants as I had in there survived. Obviously we've got a few. It's starting to get a little bit there, but I've had one here, there was a couple here, some here, and they haven't taken up. And same thing here. We got a couple coming in, but not as many as I had previously, which is a shame. And I don't know if it was just the the unrelenting freezing and thawing that killed off a lot of them. So, and same thing over here. A couple of raspberries have grown up, but not really. This one is doing well. This one in particular, this bin just wasn't draining water, and it might have drowned all the plants. I ended up cutting some drain holes, drilling some drain holes in here, and that's helped. But it just wasn't draining on its own. I don't know whether the holes were clogged that are built into the containers, but it never drained, so it might have drowned the plants. Along here, the blueberries are doing well, mostly. I have 10 blueberry plants, and this one didn't quite make it. I had hoped it would, but it doesn't look like it has, so I'll end up pulling that one out and replacing it with another. But the others are all coming up, and I'm hopeful we'll get some nice blueberries this year. They've grown at different rates since they were put in, and I guess just based on their own different nature is how they're growing. Like this one's like a really tall one, this one's a real low one, and so we've got a few more. This one here also is missing. I might have mentioned previously that the dog knocked it over, so this was a small branch that broke off from one of I think it was this blueberry plant, so I just stuck it in the ground, and who knows, maybe it'll root. And this one is doing well here as well. Now this is my oldest blueberry, and it's coming in nicely this year. It looks like it's going to be covered in berries. So this one's about 5 years old, I think, 4 or 5 years old. So it's finally looking like it's coming in, although it's still pretty low to the ground. This is my grapevine. This is my Niagara. It's a green seedless grape. And for the longest time, I wasn't sure if it had died over the winter. But now I'm finally seeing some growth here. And looks like they're going to start growing up. I probably shouldn't have let the second branch grow up, but should have been pruned off and just all the energy trained into this one, and then allowed it to spread over the top and then prune it. But it's growing, so we'll see how that goes. I was going to try and like cut off this little spur and plant it in the ground and see if I could propagate another one. But now that it's started to bloom, I'll wait. I think you have to wait till they're kind of like dormant or whatever. So maybe next year I'll do that. Any of these cuttings that I do, I'll take them off and see what kind of additional cuttings I can get. Same thing with the red seedless. This is the Reliance. I was also worried that it wasn't going to grow, and I was going to cut this one off as well. But now that they look like they're popping, I'll wait. And the dog joined me. I'll be working on my rain catchment system very soon. I'll be building a platform for those barrels to stand on, raise them up off the ground a little bit, and I'll be using a pump that I have if I need water in the garden at any time. Some of the summers here get pretty dry and very hot, and if any of the plants start to flag, I'll use the water then to hydrate them. The coop and the pen yard is slowly coming along. Still got some more cleanup to do. Got some buckets to move out of there, but I've got the fence up for the coop, so now this will be an extra yard, extra run area that the chickens will be allowed to run around in. As I said, I still got some more cleanup to do, but it's slowly coming along. And by the time the chicks, which you saw in the last video, by the time they're ready, I'll have this whole area ready to go. I've moved my compost pile. This bin here used to be inside the pen area, and so I've moved it. And I've actually left the compost here for the chickens to scratch through when they come out, and may or may not move those things out of the way. But my idea is just to let them to be able to scratch through it. I've started up, as I said, the compost bins again for the garden, and they'll be ready to go soon. My forsythia, nice bright color for the spring, let you know that spring is finally coming. So I'm letting them remain. They are going to get a good trimming this year, just to be able to fill in the center areas so that there's growth going along there. Now let me just take a look this way and show you that there's some plantings going on here. And these shrubs here, the evergreens, they had actually been inside the run area right along the fence, so I've moved them out of there. It was kind of shady over there, so they weren't really getting the light that they needed, the sunlight, so I've moved them out into the food forest area, and I think it helps naturalize the area and provide some instant color. Now this is one of the planting mounds, one of the planting beds that I've put in. If you recall from my installing swales video, there's a swale that runs right behind it. And then I just mounded the dirt up over here, and this is where my persimmon tree is going to go. It should be coming in within the next day or so. I just got a notice from Burnt Ridge Nursery that they're shipping it out, so that's good. So that'll go here. And as I said, I planted the shrub there, the evergreen shrub, just for some color, some visual interest. Similarly, these are lilies. I got them off a free cycle. Someone was giving them away, so I got several bags of the corms or bulbs or whatever you would call it, and so I planted some on this bed, and if you look down there, there's some more planted, and then there's some planted in the front as well. Here, it doesn't look all that exciting right now, but these are grape hyacinths. I found a whole bunch growing in my driveway. There's some grass. Well, it's an island, not grass. It's covered in wood chips now, but a whole bunch of grape hyacinths had sprouted up over there. So I transplanted a few here, and then a bunch more over there. And again, just for some naturalization, some color, and some visual interest. And there'll be more plantings going in the future. I plan on using native plants. For example, for ground covers, there's called a bearberry, and it's a low-growing plant that I'm guessing is attractive to bears. But we don't have to worry about bears here. So I plan on doing things like that and getting, as I said, native plants. I've got several picked out, some grasses, things like that. It's not going, there will be obviously food planted in here eventually, annuals and things like that. Right now I'm still planting most of my vegetables in the garden, but eventually I will be moving some things out into the food forest to create a holistic approach to the environment here. I installed a walkway. These were stones that I made of my kids' handprints and footprints when they were young. They're about almost 20 years old, these stepping stones. And it's a nice reminder to me of my kids while I'm out here in the garden. And again, just some more visual interest while we're out here. I'm thinking of making just a small bridge, an arch, wooden arch bridge, walkway, just to go in between this tree and this planting mound here. And again, just a visual interest, and it helps guide you through the garden, how you want to walk. So I'm thinking of having something, not quite sure, some kind of planting right here, and just to break up the path so you're just not walking straight right along here. You have to kind of like walk your way through the garden and the food forest. So that's the theory behind it, and that's why I said if I go this way, putting just a small bridge going over. No real purpose for it other than to create a visual interest. In this planting bed, we've actually got a fruit tree, or as I like to call them, my fruit sticks. This is a cherry, Montmorency, I believe it's pronounced, and it looks like it's starting to grow. You got the buds coming out of it here. So it had a little bit more height on it, but when I planted it, I cut it off at the knee high, and that way I'm trying to encourage low level growth to make it easy to pick the fruit. In this planting bed, got some more lilies here, as I pointed out before, but also I have 2 apricots. They look like hell. I don't know. I'm assuming they're just dormant right now, and they'll end up springing to life soon. I left the identification tags on them, but they've kind of like just washed away, so I'll have to look at my paperwork to see what kind of apricots they are. But so we've got apricots here, and we've got the cherry here, and as I said, persimmon will be coming in soon. Oh, and my paddle boat will be moving out of the food forest very soon. The black raspberries, they're springing to life now. Last year we had some great production out of them, and I'm looking forward to having more this year. And I'll either be dipping them down into the dirt to get some more plants in between here, or I'll take some cuttings and try to grow more blackberries to have this whole area really just a hedge of blackberry production. Although, to be honest, the amount of blackberries that we had last year, there was just so many. They tasted so good too. And we had 2 blackberry pies that we were able to make from them, plus use them in cereal and just eating whenever I was out here in the garden. It was a nice snack to have while I was out here. So this has always been one of my more successful plants that I've grown here, and I'm looking forward to continued success with them. Not so much my apples. They've come to life now, and we actually have a 3rd variety here. This is a golden treat columnar apple, and I screwed that up with the pruning because I didn't realize it was a dwarf and it was supposed to just grow up in a straight line, and so I hacked that. So I don't think it's actually going to grow much more than that now, since the way I had pruned it, taking out its central leader in there. But we'll let that grow as it is. This one looks like half of it died. Can't really tell what's going on here. It looks like there still might be some potential for growth, but it's like the branches are pretty barren, so I'm going to give it a little time yet, see what happens, and then if necessary I'll just cut this back and allow the other stem to grow. My apple stick here, this is a Honeycrisp apple, and again, like the other fruit trees, I've cut it at knee-high to encourage lower level production. These are my peach trees, and I think I might have been a little too aggressive in my pruning this year. I think I cut off a whole bunch of the fruiting stems on it. So I mean, we still have blossoms on here, and it's got plenty of sunlight in here, so if the fruit does set this year, because last year all my fruit fell off, every single peach that I had. So hopefully if the fruit sets, and I'm hopeful it does, that it'll get plenty of sunlight to encourage the fruit to ripen. These two trees are Alberta peaches, and I've got a third one here, and off the top of my head I can't remember which variety it is. I'll list it below though, and I'll check it out later. You can see here I'm starting to make little dog tags for my trees so that I will remember what they are, and I'll show you how I made these in a future video. But I had been keeping the these tags on them for a while, and also these little labels. This says Burbank Plum, but I'm taking all these off and removing them because I think I almost strangled my plum tree over here. This is, as I said, a Burbank plum. This was planted last year, so it's not really flowering. It's not flowering at all this year, just growing out. But my two Santa Rosa plums, they were really in flower this year, and I'm hopeful we get some plums out of them, because this last year, and I'm not sure if you're getting blinded by the sun here, there was just a small patch of flowers up in this area, and that was all that flowered. Now both trees were covered in flowers, and I saw pollinators out here. I never knew what they were called, but they look like little bees, but they're actually not bees. They're called hoverflies, and they were swarming all over this. There were some bees on these too, but I'd never known what those things were, and they said they were called hoverflies, and they were going from flower bud to flower bud. So I'm hopeful that we actually will get some plums this year. But what happened was I had one of these tags around my tree, right here, and I'll bring you in, and you can still see the line going around. It was actually strangling the tree, and I only realized it too late, and you can still see there's a piece of the string sitting right here. It just grew into the tree. So I quickly removed all the strings on most of the plants, the remaining ones, and that's why I'm starting to make these identification tags. They got plenty of room on them, and if it gets close, I can easily cut off these zip ties and put on a bigger one and open up the space for it. One other problem I thought I might have created for my fruit trees is down here. You can see it's like a darker shade than up here, and what that was from, these trees, when they were originally planted, they had from the big box store. It had like a piece of paper around it, said, you know, fruit tree or whatever on it, and I had left it there, never thinking of it. But when I finally took one off, and it almost looked like it was just constantly wet in there, and I was worried about rot developing. So I quickly took them off as well, and I'm hopeful that I haven't damaged the trees. I think they're doing okay. They look like they're doing okay, but other than my pruning actions on them. And I'm still keeping an eye on our praying mantis nest here. Haven't seen any signs of life just yet, but I'm watching just in case they emerge. There could be hundreds of them coming out of there from what I understand. And while only one or two will end up remaining, it'll be a nice having that predator in the garden. Now, along here, this is where I planted my asparagus. And again, not sure if it's because of the cold, the unrelenting cold that we've had. I haven't seen any signs of growth yet. First time I've ever planted asparagus, so I'm not really sure what it's supposed to do. But we'll see. And we have one, well, I think there's 3 or 4 crowns in here. I've got another crown over here, another crown here, and I see my strawberry has finally popped up back there, that I'm hoping to encourage to end up growing into a massive planting running underneath the fruit trees as a ground cover. And I'll probably be adding more strawberries all along the frontier and letting them trail into the walkways naturally. And I do have one more asparagus crown here. In these 2 buckets, these are my potatoes. My seed potatoes are planted in this bucket, and my store-bought ones that I chitted are planted in this bucket. And we'll see how they grow this year. And I just figured I'll just continue to pile dirt up on top as the plants emerge and hopefully get a lot more potatoes. So that's primarily the food forest and how it stands right now. There's one other area I want to show, and that's the front of the house. So let's go out there. Here in the front, I obviously still have grass. And I'll be keeping this green. But as you can see, if you look real close, it's more clover than grass, and I have no problems with that. There's also a lot of dandelions too, and I don't mind that either. Last year I used the dandelions from here in the backyard to make a dandelion wine, and we'll be doing that this year since I've dramatically reduced the amount of dandelions that I'm going to have. But because their tap roots go way down into the soil and bring up nutrients, I let them grow. As you can see, I've put some wood chips to use over here as well. Created some planting beds. This one here has some more of those lilies that I got from Free Cycle. And then I've got 2 pear trees. This one is called the Kiefer pear, I think that's how it's pronounced. And this is a Bartlett pear. So again, cutting them low to encourage low growth. And there'll be other plantings along in this bed as well. No trees, but maybe a shrub or 2, or some low growing fruit. Along here, however, I want to plant fruit shrubs, whether some cherry, some honeyberry, things of that nature. That might be later this year, but that's why I created the bed now, so that it would be ready to go. Up here I just have ornamentals and planted for the most part. Although right up here we have another raspberry growing, and it seems to be doing okay. Yeah. This is a Ligelia think that's how it's pronounced. And that looks really pretty. It's got a lot of pink purple flowers when it's in bloom. It always looks like it's dead every year, but it comes back to life, and it's doing quite well now. The last area to show is underneath my Japanese maple. Had I been into permaculture sooner, I wouldn't have a Japanese maple here, but this has actually done quite well since I planted it about 10 years ago. But I've also planted asparagus underneath here. 4 different plants over here, in the back, and over there. And like the others, haven't seen any signs of growth yet, but we'll see what happens. And then the last plant that we have is a lilac shrub. I do have, along with my persimmon tree coming in, a little leaf linden. I was in Vermont, and at their it's alongside Lake Champlain, their eco center there, and they had a whole bunch of little leaf lindens growing there. That was the most fragrant tree I've ever smelled in my life. So I've got one of them coming. My wife likes fragrant shrubs around the kitchen. Likes to have the smells coming into the house, so I'll be planting that somewhere. And that actually might be going over in that island over there. It gets to be a very large tree, 30, 40, 50 feet tall, I believe. And it's just a super fragrant tree. But right now I've got a lilac, and that actually puts out a ton of blooms every year as well. So I have another rain barrel here, and that's just, I don't know, I've been collecting rain barrels over time, but I do prefer to have them instead of just having the water run down. So I'll be hooking that up this year to this downspout, and maybe I'll just be using that water to water the blueberries along here, run some drip line, bury some PVC underground, and then feed to the blueberries to keep them well watered. And that's the tour of the garden this year. We've done a lot of work. Had to put a halt to the food forest work for the time being. I mean, when the fruit trees came in, I planted them right away, and didn't want to do the same thing I did with the onions. And but we had to work on the chicken coop, build the chicken brooder, which you saw in the last video. So the chicks are here now, and I got to make sure everything is ready for them. So I'll be working more on that pen area to clean it up, so that in about a month or so, they'll be able to move out there and live there. And then it's just going to be a matter of collecting more plants to plant in the food forest. I've got the foundation in, I've got the floor down, I've got the fruit trees planted, so I think I've got a good foundation to grow on. And now I can start putting in shrubs and plants and annuals, things of that nature, so that we can have a highly productive food forest. All right, if you like what you see, give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel if you don't already do so, and ring that alarm bell, and that way you'll be notified right away when videos like this are posted. And check us out on Facebook. I regularly post there on updates of what I'm doing to turn my suburban home into a homestead. Okay, thanks for watching.